You are about to enter the no superstition zone of rational thinking and intellectual curiosity here on the Atheist Forum. Standing by for your questions or comments at 727-441-3000, where you can talk to a real live atheist here on Tan Talk 1340.
We're real and we're live. This is the Atheist Forum, and we're happy to have you here this afternoon. We have a special guest, and we're going to talk about some interesting little debates here. And first, I want to say that if you would like to contribute to our delinquency, you can do so by calling 727-441-3000 or out of town 866-826-1340. And we're always glad to hear from you. We are also being broadcast live on youtube.com. Look for the Atheist Forum. And or you can go to our website to learn more about who we are and what we're all about at www.aof.ngo. Okay, so I'm Jim Peterson, and with me here today, my cohort in crime is Joe Reinhardt.
Guilty.
Accepted. And we have a special guest in the form of Joe Richardson.
Hi, glad to be here.
Welcome, Joe. All right, so what we're talking about today is church-state separation, and also its effect in a government. How much interaction should there be between the church and state as it's expressed in local government? Joe has had, I should say Joe Richardson, has had some experience. In fact, we've all had a little bit of experience in delivering invocations for state government, for local government bodies, city commissions, county commissions, and so forth, with varying degrees of success. Joe, what kind of success have you experienced?
Well, I've been working with our group in Central Florida called the Central Florida Free Thought Community. And for the last 4 years, ever since the decision in Greece versus Galloway came down from the Supreme Court, we've been going around to local governments, cities, counties in our area to offer to do secular invocations as part of their invocation process.
Now, what did the Greece decision amount to? How did it change the way that local governments participate with free thought groups?
Right. The question in that case was whether or not they should have invocations at municipal meetings. And this was a town in New York, and what it ended up
Greece.
Called Greece. And what it ended up being was the Supreme Court said, yes, it's okay for you to have invocations at local government meetings, but the process has to be non-discriminatory.
Mm-hmm. That's the challenge.
And that is the challenge, because they often try to find ways around this to either limit who can participate or some other kind of restrictions on
Basically, it's more or less a come one, come all, in line with the idea that if you're going to allow some sort of Christmas display in front of or in a public park, that you have to allow for any other religious or seasonal displays that people want to put up.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, in that decision, they explicitly called out atheists as being among the people who should be allowed to give an invocation. So,
This is a kind of a recognition of the fact that religious ideas, whether they be in the form of an idea that there is no God, which is a proposition that atheists advance, or in the form of various kinds of gods, which various kinds of religions, and we all know they're out there, thousands and thousands of them. But those ideas actually belong to the people, not to the government. And the First Amendment, as you know, explicitly says that the government is to maintain a strictly hands-off attitude when it comes to people's religions.
Exactly right. They're supposed to remain neutral with respect to those things. So that's why you see a lot of these problems now with governments that are putting 10 Commandments monuments in front of their courthouses or whatever, or even most recently, you know, there were these lip sync videos from the police departments, you know, that started with the one in Texas that did a lip sync to God's Not Dead. And, you know, there are a lot of complaints about that.
So there's really not much of a difference between actually singing a song or just lip syncing to it. You're still putting something out there that, if it's done in an official capacity, suggests that the government endorses this or that idea.
Sure. You got a whole police department out there lip syncing to a song called God's Not Dead. It can easily create the perception that they are endorsing that belief.
So the next time you're stopped by a cop for a traffic infraction, you flash your cross at them or whatever.
I can name that song. Tell me, you're from Lake City.
Winter Garden.
Winter Garden.
Yeah.
And the good folks in the city council up there have been very receptive to the idea that this handed down by the Supreme Court that all people ought to be eligible to deliver an invocation. How's that going up in Winter Garden?
Yeah, well, they've been somewhat receptive, I guess. They did, you know, after the decision came down from the Supreme Court, I made a request to the city to do an invocation, and they were considering it. And then, you know, there was this other thing going on where I was not standing for the pledge during the meetings, and they ended up kicking me out because I wouldn't stand for the pledge. And that created a whole hullabaloo, which kind of distracted from the issue. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
But then as part of that process, they did institute, they got rid of invocations for a while. They just said, okay, we're not even going to bother with it. And then about 6 months later, they decided to bring them back, created this policy. And the policy is in such a way that the commissioners themselves get to choose who does the invocations, and they don't have to pick any particular person. So there is this aspect of if they don't like you for any reason, they're under no obligation to pick you according to the policy that they've done. So,
and that policy doesn't seem to be in keeping with the Supreme Court decision. You know, having a policy doesn't relieve them of the responsibility of obeying the law.
Right. It's still an issue of equal access, equal opportunity, equal treatment under the law. And in this way, yeah, I think they're not treating all of their residents fairly. So
other people have delivered an invocation more than once in the time since you first applied?
That's correct. Part of the policy is that they maintain a list, which the commissioners are supposed to choose from. And you can be on the list if you're a representative of a 501c3 that has a presence in Winter Garden, or you're a Winter Garden resident representing a 501c3. And so I'm actually on the list, for instance, but I've never been picked.
How long has it never been since you've been picked?
They reinstituted this policy, I think it was in March of 2015. So it's been 3.5 years now. And
quite a lot of city meetings between.
And sorry, the city meeting?
Yeah, the meetings where an invocation was required. That's quite a large number, I would imagine.
Oh yes, yeah. We're talking. They have 22 meetings a year, so you know we're talking about 75 meetings or so by this point.
Oh, just bad luck.
But they haven't chosen me. Yes, but there are people on the list that they've chosen as many as 4 times in that same time frame. So got some people on the list being chosen multiple times to do it. Other people on the list, like me, who haven't been chosen at all. And there are some people who wanted to do an invocation, who, because of the 501c3 restriction, they can't even be on the list now. And they're Winter Garden residents. They have, you know, in my mind, they have every right to do an invocation if they want to do it, but they can't even be on the list now.
That seems kind of arbitrary, other than perhaps it gives them more leverage to ban people that they don't particularly like. Maybe the average Satanist or Wiccan is probably not a 501c. And I've heard commissioners say things like, oh, yes, we'll allow free thinkers and Buddhists or people of religions that we don't agree with, but absolutely no Wiccan is ever going to set foot in
right. And that's just as much of a problem as anything else, because they are restricting, how much
favoring one religion over another.
Exactly.
Blatantly.
It doesn't matter whether you agree with their views or not. If you're going to allow one, you have to allow all. So.
Should any government official ever be allowed to say that they agree or do not agree with a religion when they're speaking in an official capacity?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know exactly how to answer it. I think that it depends on the situation, the context, exactly what they're saying. But you certainly wouldn't want them, as a commissioner, encouraging people to go to their church or, saying things like, I think that everybody should believe in my God or anything like that. That would be probably out of line.
That's essentially what they're saying when they say that when they permit some people to address the city council or commission, what is it?
The commission in Winter Garden,
in Winter Garden, or anywhere else for that matter.
Yeah.
When they will permit some people to speak and others not to speak about their religious ideas and beliefs, when the time is open, this invocation idea is meant to give citizens an opportunity to express themselves in the way that they feel about their government, which you did very well in the invocation I saw you deliver.
Thank you.
It was excellent. But the idea that a government official is going to approve, we don't need their approval or disapproval.
Yeah.
It's all religions, whether it's the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Pope, or the Dalai Lama, they're expressing their own personal views and ideas, the same as any ordinary citizen, and that any citizen should be deprived of that opportunity, which is exercised by their government that they elect, because it's not popular, because it's a different sort of religious expression. Atheism is a religious expression. All the other religious expressions are the same. They're unique and individual, and they belong, those rights to speak about that belong to the people. It's not in the government's position or charter to say.
Well, perhaps it is, since they are charged with perpetuating more or less the status quo, which is to say keeping the state in order and functioning, whatever level of state we're talking about. And so while our arguments seem quite reasonable to us, because that's how we address them, they're dealing, I'm sure, some of these people with the idea that, when consequences rain down upon us for blasphemy and for making light of invocation and for not properly praising and adoring the Almighty du jour, it isn't just one or two of us. Whole populations are wiped out. The earth opens up and swallows people right along with their wives and children. We have examples of plenty of this. And so, again, it isn't just a matter of convenience or law. It's a matter of, in the back of their minds, perhaps, and I'm sure for some of the more fundamentalists in the front of their minds, it isn't just a matter of equality. It's a matter of survival.
It could be, yeah. In the case of Winter Garden, we have nothing to go on there because they won't speak about it anymore. I go practically to every meeting, and I try to address specific complaints that I have about the policy or the way it's implemented or anything like that, and I get no response from them. So I don't know.
So you were therefore being deprived of your First Amendment right to petition the government for redress of grievance. You have a grievance, they won't hear it.
Well, they're listening. I'm on record and everything.
They pretend to listen,
but they don't respond. So,
and I would like to point out, this is Judy from Atheists of Florida. Yes. I would like to point out that we did invite them to participate in this program. I sent them a letter asking them, and they were given the phone number. If they would like to call in, they're welcome to call in. If they would, but like you said, I never heard anything back from them. Their response when I wrote asking why they hadn't invited you to give an invocation was simply to send me the 2 resolutions they passed, which I had explained in my email. I had already read those resolutions. But they are just basically ignoring their citizenship, because according to city data, 67% of the population of Winter Garden is not religiously affiliated. So that's quite a large chunk of their population.
Who's your source for that?
City data. I'll have the link to their information when I post this on our website.
So I think the population of Winter Garden is north of 40,000 now. So you can do the math, but it's going to be 25 to somewhere between 25 and 30,000 people that fall into that category, if that's right.
But it's always the religious enthusiasts who seem to rule the roost when it comes to an opportunity to be heard by city government, by any government for that matter.
Yeah.
And we still have, I think that's a peculiar kind of distortion of the way in which our American democracy has developed. And it seems to be fairly common in other areas as well.
Agreed. And I'll just take this moment to encourage everyone to get out and vote.
Please do.
Right.
And if you have thoughts about it, give us a call, 866-826-1340. We'll be more than happy to hear from you.
That's right. And just because you call in, doesn't mean you have to donate. It doesn't mean you have to pay just to insult us. We have a free Insult an Atheist evening. And you don't have to worry about money at all. You can go right to our website and donate, because Lord knows we need the money.
He certainly does. So anyway, after Joe Richardson, after all of your experiences with your problematic government, how do you feel about that now? How does it make you feel not to be recognized as a legitimate and full citizen of your own country?
Yeah, it's a little disorienting, I guess. For those who are only listening and not watching, I am a white male, middle aged, and so I grew up not having to deal with a lot of bigotry or any kind of rejection at all. And so this is a new experience for me in the last 4 years. And it gives me a new insight, a new perspective on what people who go through a lot worse must feel. So yeah, it can be frustrating. I think I have a valid complaint, and even if it's not valid, having the commissioners just be totally silent and not even responding to my complaints is frustrating.
I feel like you've been shunned.
Almost.
Ignored for a certainty. And
Yeah.
I would say that's a strategy, not even a tacit strategy. And the reason that they use that strategy is because it works. You'll get tired ultimately and go home. And if you don't, sooner or later, you'll die. Okay, if nothing else. And if the 40, 50, 60% of your fellow citizens in that area don't feel compelled to pick up the cause at some point, then it will just go away. Which brings up the question of, why is it so damned important to you in the first place? What do you care if they bleed at the clouds or not?
Yeah. And I think the answer to that is that it's become very clear to me the issues of full inclusion that surround this kind of thing, and it's not just me. It's become clear that there are so many people who are in similar positions, if not the exact same position as mine, who cannot speak up. in the way that I can. I'm in a position where I don't have to worry about my job. I don't have to worry about losing my family, or I've lost a couple of friends, as a part of this, but there's not a lot of risk involved for me and what I'm in terms of that loss. So, it's important not just for me personally, but for all of the other people that can't speak up like it. I mean, I know personally people in Winter Garden who I've spoken to them who they don't want to say anything because their kids are in Boy Scouts or something like this, and they've got young kids and they don't want their kids to be ostracized.
Yeah, or beat up in the locker room after phys ed.
Right. So that's why it's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it must be very easy for people who don't speak up. As you yourself experienced, when you didn't say anything, life was easy. You didn't have any of these concerns.
Yeah.
But now that you have spoken up and become aware of the problems that we've just been talking about, it does make one feel bad. But on the other hand, it's also empowering to a degree, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that I'd given an invocation in Winter Park. I've actually given, I think, 5 or 6 invocations in other towns in the Central Florida area. And it's an interesting experience. It's an empowering experience. And I recommend it.
Well, I think it's your pioneering work that has made it possible for other people to think that they might have a chance to speak to their own city government or their own government at any level.
Yeah.
About the things most dear to them when the government provides the appropriate forum for that to be done, which apparently they do through the method of invocations.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it works out that way. I'm not sure what else to say about that.
Well, we're living in an interesting time in our country with the present national administration being the way it is. And with a great deal of them committed to, shall we say, a certain kind of cultural response that is not at all welcoming to people with different ideas.
Right.
Like just this morning, one of our leaders tweeted to the NFL and football leagues that trying to distract people, no doubt, but some message about not kneeling as a form of protest. But yet people are kneeling as a form of protest. They're out on the streets in the form of protest. And they're giving invocations. Yeah. Maybe not as a form of protest, but it could be. Yeah. Yes, it's a way for people to express themselves.
It's a way
First Amendment.
It's a way for people to fully participate in their government.
That's right.
It is part of the process now, as deemed by the Supreme Court in Grease versus Galloway, and there's absolutely no reason why any citizen shouldn't be involved.
Mm-hmm. Well, clearly the commissioners of Winter Garden feel strongly that whatever controversy comes out of this is good for them, that the people who go out and vote for them because of their position on it. Otherwise, they would have just stayed with the moment of silence.
Yes.
All right. So we're at the midpoint now in our program, and we'll have a little message from our sponsor, us.
And remember,
Atheists of Florida is a nonprofit membership organization founded in 1992. For over 25 years, Atheists of Florida has brought atheists together to address state-church separation issues, provide legal assistance in cases of religious discrimination in employment or educational institutions, help atheists meet others who want to live their lives free of religion, and produce the Atheist Forum. For membership information, visit our website at atheistofflorida.com, where you'll find our newsletters, annual reports, statement of purpose, and information about meetings and events. That's atheistofflorida.com.
Okay, well, we're back with you again, and again, let me give out those that phone number. It's locally 727-441-3000, or outside the broadcast area 866-826-1340. And we would gladly entertain anything you have to say And as Joe said, insults and all, we love them. We love you.
I like them.
It should be said that although you're listening to the Atheist Forum, the word atheist simply denotes a situation where you do not reference God in your activity, and which is true of 99.9% of most broadcasts or most other human activities, with the exception of religious activities. And sometimes I wonder about those. But anyway, we've been talking here about about how citizens can impact their government in terms of advancing religious freedom. So we'd like to hear from you and anyone here who will have something to say about it, about methods and new advances by which we can affect religious expression or non-religious expression.
But before we do that, let's get our quote of the day.
Oh, say, good idea, Judy.
Joseph has our quote today for us. Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, this
You're on.
is from Christopher Hitchens, and it's a quote that I've been using a lot the last few years, and you'll see why. The quote is, "Never be a spectator of unfairness or stupidity. The grave will supply plenty of time for silence."
Plenty of time to sleep when you're dead.
Now, one thing to keep in mind is that Christopher Hitchens, who died in 2011, was an outstanding journalist and writer. And you would be well advised to look him up at your public library. And if you don't see anything there, his books are readily available from all sources otherwise. So check him out. You will be amazed and well rewarded for your efforts. So
if I could expand a little bit on the invocation issue.
Blow it up.
I'm not the only one that's doing this in Central Florida. This is a project of our group, the Central Florida Free Thought Community. And over the past 4 years, since the Grease versus Galloway decision has come down, we've done more than, I think, 55 invocations in localities across Central Florida, both cities and counties. And we have quite a variety of people who have done them as well. I think, something over like 35 different people have done them, including myself. And of course, David Williamson and Jocelyn Williamson, who
Been on our show.
Yeah.
Yes.
And help, they started the Central Florida Free Thought Community.
Yeah, it has to be said of David and Jocelyn that there have been outstanding leaders for the Free Thought community overall.
Absolutely.
And things are beginning to get interesting in Florida, and certainly that, along with, of course, AOF, is one of the most important organizational affiliations that you can have. So we strongly advise that anyone listening to this consider becoming a member. It's not expensive, and it's a golden opportunity to make a significant contribution to something that really matters to your fellow citizens.
As Joe said just a few minutes ago, one of his motivations for the time and effort that he spent pursuing the Invocation Project, among others, is that he hopes that it will encourage other people to become involved in the political process. There's never, in my recollection, and I'm almost 74 years old, been a time when it's been more important that is true. People need to get off of their butt and get active at some level, even if it's only to go vote. Voting is the first step. It's the minimum requirement. You shouldn't even be allowed to call yourself a citizen if you don't at least vote for somebody or something. But if you're not happy with the status quo, you can be sure that the people in power and the people who benefit from it are not going to change it on their own. They need some incentive to do that. And that incentive can often be found at the ballot box. And if it doesn't work there, well, there's been change found by way of the streets as well. But we need to be more active, and we need to start hammering on our public officials and let them know that it's not in their best interest to discriminate on a religious basis. It's in their best interest to totally separate church and state, because more and more and more people are becoming members of the nons, of the not affiliated, and or apatheists, if you like. I like to take credit for coining that word. In any case, we need to do something, or you need to learn to like it, one or the other.
Yeah, I think one of the largest and most significant political forces in the United States are the non-participants. They're responsible for most of the politicians out there who are in office presently, because if we got everyone to participate, perhaps it will take what they do in Australia. If you don't vote, you get a fine, $50 or $100, something like that. Yeah, so that can motivate a significant number of people. Hopefully, it will motivate them to look into the issues, try to figure out what position best serves them, and vote accordingly.
Maybe you'd like to tell us about some of the other issues or projects that you're involved in with the Central Florida Free Thought Society or
Sure.
community.
Sure. Yes. Wearing my shirt today. Yeah, we have a number of activities that go on. One of the major ones that we have is we have a monthly educational meeting where we invite speakers to come in.
Phone numbers, websites?
Oh, phone numbers and websites. Sure. You can go to www.cflfreethought.org, and you can use CFL Free Thought on, find us on YouTube and Twitter and things like that. So we have a monthly educational meeting, we have park cleanup, we have social gatherings, free thought cafes, we call them, things like that. I mean, we do a lot of handling of complaints because we're a chapter of the FFRF. So we'll take complaints and we pass them, gather appropriate information and pass them on to the FFRF if necessary, and write letters, either to the newspaper or to elected officials, advocating for certain positions. So we got a lot going on. The Central Florida Free Thought Community has been in existence for, I think we're coming up on 6 years now, and seems to be growing. So
yeah, every other year or so you hold an event called Free Flow.
Right.
Which is a gathering of folks who share similar outlooks as those we've been discussing here.
I always say free flow. Flow is innocent.
Yeah, that's actually sponsored by the Florida Humanist Association,
Yes.
but the Central Florida Free Thought Community has a strong tie to that, and they
Indeed,
show
it
up.
does.
Yes, absolutely. And the cruise, right? I forgot about the cruise. That's coming up every spring, and this year, in 2019, that is, they're going to have Matt Dillahunty as their special guest on the Free Thought Cruise.
He's worth the price of admission.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
by
He's
himself.
gonna do magic, I think, and give a talk or two, and be available, throughout the cruise. And there's nothing special about it. I mean, it's a cruise you can go on and hang out with friends, like-minded people, and just have fun.
Do you cruise to anywhere in particular?
Oh, yeah. You had to ask me that. I think is it Cuba this year?
It is Cuba.
Yes. Okay.
And that is special.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, this will be just the main thing is the voyage itself. Stopover in Cuba will be about for a day, and there won't be any time to do any political agitation. Just generally be entertained by the cultural.
Right.
Yes, that's right. Anyway, it should be interesting because you get to see all those old cars and talk to some actual Cubans if you have Espanol. So we'll see how that works out.
Right.
So what other activities?
I was curious, talking about the invocations, which is kind of our main topic.
Yeah.
And going back to 2015 and even before that, I have to admire your patience, which raises the question of why don't we sue these guys? It seems like the only thing that's going to get them off the snide is to and it's not even their money, but that will get the attention of the public because it's their money, which they're going to lose readily. Why don't we sue these clowns?
Well,
Commissioners, I'm sorry.
There's a difference? I shouldn't say
Bozo
that.
the
That's
commissioner?
not right.
You've never heard of it?
There's stuff that is going on in the background. There's other lawsuits that are happening. You may know about Rowan County, North Carolina, and there's one or two others. Chino Valley was another one that have to do with prayer at meetings. And I don't know that there's any particular timeline for anything like that. But I do know that some of these things have to kind of be settled before anything like that could be considered. So that's it. So we would much, just like FFRF, we would much rather have this problem solved by education than by a lawsuit. So hopefully the commissioners will come around. I actually did have a brief private conversation with one of the commissioners last night, because there was a commission meeting last night. And as usual, I made some comments during the public comment section of the meeting, and ended up speaking with one of the commissioners afterwards. Hopefully with ongoing situations like that, we'll be able to convince them that the current policy is not a good policy, that it is in fact discriminatory, that it is unfair, that it doesn't provide for equal treatment, and that they'll agree to change it.
Are there any of them that actually do agree with you?
I have to say that the very first time this came up, so after I got kicked out for not standing for the pledge, and they had a special meeting to consider the pledge issue and the invocation issue, they went to the moment of silence, as you know. Then 6 months later, when they brought it up again, they brought it up in a different way, with some drafts that the lawyer thought was okay, and the vote was 4-1. Okay, so there was one commissioner, his name is Bob Buchanan, and he voted against the policy at that time, and his reasoning was spot on. He said during the meeting, he said, I don't want to listen to anybody else's prayers, any other religion's prayers. Therefore, I'm not going to force my religion's prayers on anybody else. And he voted against the policy.
Very fair-minded of him.
Yes.
Indeed.
Right. Any right you claim for your own has to be extended to all other people. Otherwise, you're somewhere in the area of what they call a bigot.
Yeah. So there was that. He did. It was a unanimous vote later on when they instituted the 501c3 rule that required that the invocators be a representative of a 501c3. But for that main point, he voted against. And so
one of the things I've noticed in dealing with county commissions and elected officials over the years, and we too have been doing this for a long time, and that is that they are willing to endure any expense and any hardship as long as it's not their own.
mm-hmm.
They're perfectly happy to spend the public's money without limitation to defend principles that they know they're going to lose on the issues only because it appeals to their base and figures to get them reelected. It seems to me that again, litigation is about the only thing that will actually ultimately move them, and not because it's their money, but because then the voters gets their attention and they begin to say, well, I don't think we need to spend $500,000 to continue to mumble at the clouds before our meetings.
Yeah, or if you're going to do it, at least do it fairly, because that's what the Supreme Court has said.
Right.
You
At
think
least do it to where it doesn't cost us enough to build a new school.
You think that the motivation that is principally responsible for this situation is the need the politicians have to cater to their base? We've referred to that earlier, but the supposition is that the majority of their voters are people who are of a particular religious persuasion. and whether it's Catholic or Protestant or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Is that the reason, you think?
I don't know, and I think whatever I offer on that point would be pure speculation, because none of them have desired to volunteer what their motivations are. So I might just leave that up to them. But.
Yes, I imagine they'd be poorly served.
Has this ever come out as an issue during any campaigns? Do people show up and question them about?
Well, the last election cycle that we had in Winter Garden, 2 of the commissioners and the mayor were up for re-election. So there's 5 commissioners total, and so 3 of the 5 were up for re-election. None of them, they were all incumbents,
unopposed.
They all 3 ran unopposed, so it was not an issue. Yeah.
So,
but
why did you run?
Because I don't need all the hassle that goes with being a commissioner. I don't need people like me coming to myself and saying, what's the problem with this? But I do encourage people to, especially Winter Garden residents, of course, to make their views known. The emails, the contact information for the commissioners is easily available on the City of Winter Garden website, and you could go right. And you can also sign the petition that I have. I'm trying to think of the best way to get to it right now, because the URL, I have a tiny URL, tinyurl.com/WG petition. That's what it is.
Okay.
So it's Winter Garden petition, tinyurl.com/WG petition. And all it's asking the commission to do is to either make the policy fair or just get rid of the invocations altogether.
Within the next day or so, you will see that that particular link on our website.
Great.
So anybody who wants to sign it is certainly welcome to do so. Encouraged to do so, I should say.
Yes, and you don't have to be a Winter Garden resident to sign the petition. It's an informal petition. It's just to let the commissioners know that there are a lot of people who agree that it should be changed.
So there are.
Yes. How's your relationship with the media? Are they receptive if you send them a press release and start reading about yourself on Huffington Post or on the blogs or Hermit Method's site?
Yes, Hermit Meta. Yeah, he's published quite a few stories on this situation over the last 4 years. I'd say it's pretty good. The relationship is pretty good. The most recent cycle that had something, of course, the local paper there ran a story about the petition. But when I wrote them a letter to the editor to correct some of the information, they declined to print it, saying that they weren't going to do anything else. They weren't going to produce any more content until something new happened. So
don't they have an interest in at least producing correct content on what has already happened?
You would think.
Isn't that their job?
Yeah, you would think. But I didn't follow it up at that point. So I figured it was a done deal. But yeah, Hemet has been very good to us and publishes something every time something happens. So yeah.
Well, people want to know when progress has been made, because it happens all too rarely.
Yes.
So any victory that any of us have in terms of being able to change the nature of our government and relationships with we the people, I think it's something we definitely want to publicize.
Well, it's an opportunity to show that we can withhold or deliver votes. And until we can demonstrate the ability to do that on a regular basis, we will get all of the political power that we so richly deserve, which is none. The National Rifle Association research has shown it isn't that they donate so much money that they own so many politicians. That's not why they have so much political clout. The reason they have so much political clout is because when they say so-and-so is anti-Second Amendment, so-and-so finds himself out of a job. And so they can put boots on the ground, people in the polling booths.
Right.
That's the power of the NRA. We don't even have to have a particularly large budget to do that. What we need is boots on the ground.
Agreed.
Judy, you have something
Get off your butt.
Yeah, because in essence, atheists, even though we're not a monolithic block of thought, we all agree that government should be secular and must be secular. Thank you. And if you look at, I mean, there is an estimate that some 25% of Americans are atheist. And I think that may be a little higher, maybe a little low, I don't know. But that's a lot more than members of the NRA. And if we could just get our act together, like Joe said, and vote and take these politicians to task for not living by the First Amendment, we would all be better off.
If we could just get all the non-believers to stop downloading hard pornography long enough to go out and vote, we'd all be so much better off.
Yeah.
And look at all the extra bandwidth we'd have too.
I'd like to mention also that some of the supporters that we have for things like invocations for separation of church and state are in fact Christian.
Yeah,
sure.
I have a number of pastors that I have relationships with in the Central Florida area who support what I'm doing with the invocations and support, separation of church and state in general. So I think it goes beyond just us as atheists.
It's a unifying cause.
But
really,
it can bring a lot of people together. So.
Among the other groups which also support this kind of activity are Americans United for Separation of Church and State, which has a long 75-year history of being involved in making sure that our rights are protected, and that we further extend the way in which Americans have an opportunity to do things with their government.
Founded and funded by the Baptist Church.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, it's a superb organization. Yeah.
And
Barry Lynn is, I've shot video of him several times. Great guy. I hated to see him retire.
Yeah. Yes, he just did. But the organization continues on. They're doing an excellent job.
Well, he's a perfect combination. He's an ordained minister and he's also an attorney. It's sort of like being a doctor and an attorney, so you could sue yourself, right?
Especially when you're an advocate for real civil liberties.
Mm-hmm.
So that works out very nicely all the way around. So it looks like I'm chairman of the board here, and I've run out of. So what I'm going to ask for then, because we're getting close to the end of our hour here, but not that close. So there's still time for some radical new thoughts, observations, or news from anybody who has heard anything of significance.
Boy.
Well, I'll just, I'll say a little bit more about the petition, I suppose. Eventually it will reach the commissioners. Hopefully we'll have a lot of signatures, enough to impress them. If you can sign it online, but if you're in Central Florida and you want to come see me, I am out now most Saturday mornings at the Winter Garden Farmers Market, corner of Plant and Lakeview, gathering signatures for this petition. So you could come and find me there if you really wanted to meet me.
Are you selling corn? Corn?
No.
Too at the farmers market? No, okay.
Only gathering signatures. So
you should try selling corn while you're there. I mean,
maybe.
Pay your way.
But but it does. If you go and you read the petition, and you can do that at that URL that I gave you, or that you'll find on the website later, you'll find some more information about why the petition exists, not just what it is that we're asking for, but there's a whole intro there explaining what's happening with it, and then at the end is the request to, as I say, either change the invocation policy or to get rid of it.
Are there other cities, counties that come to mind that are going through the same problem where the commissioners, for whatever reason, have dug in their feet and don't want to live up to the Supreme Court ruling?
There are some. There are some commissions that still have commissioners who pray, which we feel like is a double problem,
double whammy.
And so we're working on that, but it's a process. There are quite a few of them. So.
Yeah, we have City of Tampa, which they invite employees to come in and pray.
Right.
And we've objected to that and called it to their attention because it's not appropriate for a police officer to come in and pray to Jesus for an invocation.
Or anyone,
It's-
or
anyone
into
else. for
any
that matter.
particular God.
Again, it's a tantamount to a government endorsement
Yes,
of religion. Yeah.
exactly.
Our first experience in delivering invocations, we were invited guests of the city of Tampa. And when they announced that we were going to be delivering an invocation, before we could even so much as open our mouth, two women, one man, two Hispanic women, and a black man, who you would think would be empathetic to minorities a bit,
Yeah.
got up and left. Couldn't even, were so terrified just being in the same room with us, found us so reprehensible or disgusting that they wouldn't even stay in the same room with us
Right.
and deliver these little speeches about how pious they were and they were leaving.
Mhm.
One of those people is in jail right at the moment for various forms of graft, and the other two are no longer in office, so far as I know.
Wow.
And when was that?
5 or 6 years ago, more than that.
More than that.
Oh, much
Going on
more.
10 years ago, I would think. That's
Yes.
close to 10 years ago.
Right.
Yes.
But if you suggested to them, what if the tables were turned? What if you were in the minority standing up to give a Christian prayer and half of the city council walked out on you?
Right.
How would you feel about it?
Well, and besides, if we were any other minority other than atheists and they had done that, and of course, this was back before social media and Twitter and Facebook and that sort of thing. But if they had said that sort of thing about Jews,
Yeah.
I'm sure that none of them could have got elected toilet attendant after that.
Yeah.
Well, we have again reached the conclusion of another hour of stimulus, another terminus of our experience, out of which we will make a genuine contribution to our society. So we leave you again for another week, and hope that you'll return and be with us again next week when we have another topic of vital significance that we hope you'll get something out of. And keep those cards and letters coming. And meantime, go to our website, aof.ngo, to find out more. And remember, when somebody proposes something that seems outrageous, what do we want to make them do?
Well, don't believe it just because they wrote it down. Make them prove it.
Prove it. That's right.
You have been listening to the Atheist Forum. To learn more about Atheists of Florida, visit our website at atheistofflorida.com. Continue the discussion on our website, talk.aof.ngo. And join us again next Friday for another edition of the Atheist Forum here on Tan Talk 1340.